Welcome back to this series about critical AI, talking about critical perspectives on different AI approaches and theories and thoughts. Today we are delighted to have Hito Steyerl, who is one of the leading thinkers in critical perspectives on AI. A brief bio before we start. Hito is one of the leading artists working in video today. Her work explores the divisions between art, philosophy, and politics. And she has had the solo exhibitions at among others, MoCA Los Angeles, the Reina Sofia Madrid, and the ICA London. She has participated in various Biennale, the Venice Biennale, Shanghai Biennale, Documenta, and Manifesta, and her work is in the permanent collection of the Tate Modern. She is the author of The Wretched of the Screen and writes in numerous periodicals, and she's currently a professor in the Munich Art Academy. Okay, Hito, you have outlined the key difference between a tool and an instrument, and then applied this difference to the most popular AI platforms. Can you tell me more about this?
Well, I think most people tend to conceive of machine learning applications as tools, right? I mean, AI platforms as seen as tools. I think, first of all, the fundamental distinction we need to make is that actually it's us, the users, who are the tools, and the platforms are using us. They're using our input, our data, our feedback, etc., to basically create their products. That's probably the first distinction one needs to make. Otherwise, I think, many of the current applications, especially when it comes to generative media, to sound, to image, and so on, it's in fact not wrong to think of these things as tools because they have very little choices, right? They are very blunt tools, so to speak, partly as blunt as, one-armed bandits in a casino where you have just one lever and you pull it and then you get some output. That's very often the case with image generators, that there are very few parameters to, modify if you want to get an image. So in that sense, they are tools and not instruments because you cannot fine-tune them to some degree, right? Like you would with a violin, let's say. I mean, of course, you can fine-tune them. That requires just a lot more effort. It's perfectly doable, but not, let's say, on the standard application level. And it would definitely be possible to make it happen, right? To turn machine learning applications into instruments. But I think there are industrial reasons why this is not being promoted right now and why still this is doable in a sort of DIY sense. But the platforms are not interested to turning their applications into instruments. They prefer them to be tools, and they even prefer us to be tools.
Thank you. There was one element that you specified when it comes to tools, that we can fully own tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can even destroy them somehow. We are fully in control of tools, and we especially fully understand them since we can own them, which is almost never the case with software. And so not even, of course, with these instruments. Is this another important characteristic? And why is that, in your opinion?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we are people that want to use these tools are forced into rent systems, right? Like in the Adobe ecosystem. This is now being extended to the machine learning platforms that one is not even owning one's own project anymore, but has to rent access to them by, renting cloud services, renting the software, etc., but never being in control of most things about it. Which means that you're forced into a kind of eternal dependency. You are basically dependent on platforms to access your own work, your own labor.
Let me just ask one more thing about this. I'm particularly keen on this distinction between the abstract, mostly cloud, and your local space. Also because, for my generation, the local computer was the kind of cabinet of wonders where you could have a lot of different things you created and you owned somehow. Do you think that, especially with AI, claiming your local space somehow is something that we should start to have somehow, to think about, that rethinking about our own machines, for how much we can control them, and our own local storage is more meaningful than just accepting this economy of abstract remote platforms where our data is somehow.
Yeah, of course. With every transfer to the cloud and back, there is a sort of extraction process taking place. Recently, there was a huge uproar because I think WeTransfer had announced that it would use every bit of data transferred through their platform to train their AI. So basically, we can imagine that something like that happens anytime we send or upload data. And the only way to avoid it is to keep things on your own platform, which has ups and downs. There are, of course, enough models which are also open source, actually very good ones, Chinese ones, which are small enough to have on your own machine and work with them. So it's entirely doable. But as I said, it's not convenient at all. You need to know how to set it up, etc., but it's entirely doable. But I think, this echoes the situation at large, which is that basically the supply chains of globalization have broken down, more or less, at least to some degree, and that economies or power blocks are in a way regionalizing. They are contracting, they are fragmenting. The former world, in brackets, is, so to speak, fragmenting into several spheres of influences, and we, of course, see the same in the digital sphere. Fragmentation of the digital sphere, many companies trying to fight one another to establish monopolies, etc. And then in between, users trying to regain or claim, tiny amount of autonomy. So all this is happening basically at the same time.
Very interesting, of course. Let me connect with, the most basic mechanisms of AI to one of your most famous works, which was PowerPoints in 2019, which evolved into the widely acknowledged installation Into the Future at the Venice Biennale. And there was this character, Heja, an AI entity who had a quite mesmerizing voice. I have to say, I've seen the installation a few times. I saw it at the Venice Biennale on that year, and it was quite striking me how this mesmerizing voice is playing with the mechanism of prediction, and especially their timing, which I think it's quite tricky for us. Thinking about the machine learning and AI mechanism predicting the future. So this that gave the title to your installation, and this was destabilizing somehow the viewer. You play in a very smart way with these mechanisms of prediction and their timing. Here you have begun to question the problem of people assuming that AI tells the truth, which is, I think, another crucial point here. Do you think that in some ways there is a risk of a radical reformulation of the concept of truth now that AI content has somehow taken over?
Oh, yes, definitely. But I think, the work I did was in 2019, so it was really early days. It was not even about hallucination and basically large language models, which even didn't exist at this point, hallucinating. That was not even the question at that point in time. The question was the basic structure of prediction and how this turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, or it has, its own effects. It's not just the vision, it basically creates its own reality. And this is the future was about, the structure of prediction. Then we had the next basically stage with hallucinating large language models, where it became absolutely obvious that there was basically no way to get large language models to stick to facts, that it would always go with the story which for it was most plausible, most probable, but also which it assumed to be the most popular. That's an ongoing problem, that, the more skilled large language models get with things like mathematics or physics or, STEM sciences, the more they start to hallucinate, apparently, when it comes to more soft areas of knowledge. So that number has gone up recently, which I find pretty fascinating. So the hallucination rate has increased the more sophisticated the models have become. And now we are in another phase yet, which comes on top, of the destabilization of truth, which is, I think, the hollowing out and partial destruction of meaning. What do I mean by that? Meaning, or the creation, the production of meaning, is being automated now to a large degree. Whether it's text, where it has happened, of course, for quite a few years, whether it's image, whether it's sound, things that used to be produced mostly by humans, namely meaning of some sense in the communication between humans, by becoming automated, has become extremely devalued, right? Any meaning can be produced at extremely low cost, at infinity, at scale. There is no limit in quantity, which means that basically any meaning is devalued and in a way has become well, we do not tend to believe it anymore. We do not tend to, assign any meaning to meaning, if you know what I mean. So I think that's the next level, where basically all those phone names, all those words we use to communicate with one another are being hollowed out, and its meaning sort of broken down or degraded by means of automation. We can see that very clearly in the behavior of some of these new oligarch autocrat rulers, right? Where we clearly observe that words do not make any more sense, or they do not have any more meaning, because they can mean one thing one day, another thing the next. It really doesn't matter. It's just sounds basically coming out of people's mouths. And that's another thing that started to happen also in connection with this massive surge of AI slop, right? Online, both on the level of text, but also image, these vast amounts of signs, of data, which actually are not supposed to mean anything, frankly. So that also basically confuses and distorts all parameters of meaning that used to be established between people.
There are some elements that we'll certainly come back to in a few minutes. I would really love to. But meanwhile, it really connects to the next question, which is about your experiments with tools like DALL-E. And you said, this is resonating very well with what you were just elaborating, that the plan is that they become normalized for a very broad audience that doesn't think about the consequence for the environment or the infrastructure or who owns it. And that basically AI is transforming everything in order to stay exactly the same. I'm quoting you. Do you mean that it's just another layer of controlling visual propaganda, or that it only serves to reinforce classic capitalist ideology? And then what is our role, since we are, as you said, co-creating actively these systems through our use and especially through our input? I mean, there is one element I just wanted also to point, which seems to emerge from what you say, which is the quantity. This enormous quantity, which is typical propaganda, inundating of information in order to not let you think properly. And then disrupting the meaning. What do you think?
Flooding the zone with shit, it's called the strategy. What do I think about that? So first of all, I think I have to take back the idea that everything will stay the same, or that things are changing in order to stay the same, because I think we are at a point where things are changing, definitely, just not for the better. Yeah. So I think the period since 89, which could be named the period of globalization, maybe, of neoliberal globalization, that this has definitely come to some end. We just don't know if it's going to be, let's say, more radical form of it in the future, or something else entirely, right? It could also be something different, which sort of grows out of what new liberal globalization used to be, but, mutates into something else. I don't know. But there is a possibility, that there will be some break in paradigm. And unfortunately, the probability that it's going to be for the better is very low. Let's put it like that. I mean, what we see now is the rise of authoritarianisms, nationalisms, right-wing vibe shifts basically everywhere in different flavors, but basically all complying to a very similar autocrat, corrupt, oligarch template. And definitely that's the direction we are moving to. Whether it's still going to be connected with the previous period, or whether there's going to be a break that's substantial enough to call it something different, I don't really know. But I don't think everything will stay the same. I mean, we have already seen that that's not the case.
Let's jump then to the specific question about you made about the parallel somehow between the AI tools and the right-wing government. You have recently researched the use of AI tools and more generally the flourishing of these technologies in and by right-wing governments, as of course, I mean, Trump's presidency has started to make quite easy use of them, or, I mean, not really obvious for us, but we are becoming accustomed to it, especially image-wise. How strategic do you think that owning an AI model is for power? Because we have seen the development of different AI platform models, more specifically, both in the industry and connected to power. And I mean, can you elaborate more? You've already said important things now about it, but you said that AI is not helping democracy right now. I mean, is it mostly about this constant transformation that also makes us, I'm speculating, lose points of reference constantly, so that we have just to run after what is going on, of the many things that are going on? Or is it, do you think there's a kind of strategy there to channel these changes and in order to serve the power goals somehow?
Yeah, I think, I don't think there is a sort of big strategy. People are just fumbling along and, whatever works, works. But there's a lot of things that work very well for authoritarian governments right now. So I think by trial and error, they find out what it is. It's probably important to say that it's not just owning a model, right? Like Elon Musk owns Grok or Sam Altman owns ChatGPT, because the model is already based on the possession of a huge lot of data, which, for example, in Elon Musk's case, are acquired through owning a platform. So basically, it already is sitting on the base of this former Web 2 ecosystem, right? That basically collects and monopolizes data and communication. So just having a model in itself is not enough, to wield it in a political way. I think, obviously, just the flooding the zone strategy really reminds me of this idea of Brownian noise, or any kind of noise, which is an extremely important factor in diffusion models. I mean, in basically generative AI models, noise and entropy and degradation is a very important technical aspect, right? And I think what happens today is that people are being transformed into noise, right? Into particles that are basically subjected to almost random forces and are basically violently tossed left and right, so that they are never able to recover any sense of orientation, right? So we are the Brownian noise, which is one of the prime raw matters for AI image production.
Does it connect then with what you called the instrumental irrationality on these models of machine learning?
Well, I mean, machine learning technology is not based on logical operations, right? I mean, there was once a strand, I think it was called symbolic AI or something, that was trying to recreate logical operations in neural networks, and it didn't go very far. So the way that neural networks work now is by backpropagation and creating a lot of feedback effects, which are very hard to trace back to, let's say, it's very hard to connect cause and effect in these models precisely. You can connect them approximately, of course, no? To some degree, but never fully precisely. So there's always a layer of, maybe I should rather call it a rationality instead of irrationality. It's just not really fully sticking to the paradigm of logics anymore and cause and effect relation. But this fuzziness is also a thing that can be fully instrumentalized, right? And that can basically present a new template for thinking as a whole, that you can basically go away from respecting logic, cause and effect, or standard ways to determine facts, for example, right? So this paradigm of creating something, generating something through analogy is more like, alchemy used to apparently function. I mean, was said to function in the Renaissance. So it's a sort of parascience in a way, or it's a statistical science which takes its distance from logical paradigms.
Then I have a kind of urgent question that comes from what you said, which is, but then if this fuzziness is slowly affirms itself as a kind of general paradigm to navigate, because I mean these models and the consequences on real society and economy are expanding, and if there's not anymore the cause and effects logic that, correct me if I'm wrong, has governed especially Western society, how we think about society and economy as well, then if we have to adopt fuzziness, can we think that it might become a kind of general ideology that diffuses, where we have less certain concepts of truth, not anymore consequent relationship, but we just navigate what we are surrounded by, and we are forced to think that should be enough.
It's a relational map, not an absolute map. But it's hard for me to clearly see it, also because, of course, I, like everyone else, is in this fog of transformation. So I think it will take a while, for things to become a little clearer and for us to be able to say where this massive paradigm shift is taking us. Yeah.
Okay. Which again connects very well to another question that is, I mean, you already mentioned the strict relationship, quite acknowledged that AI is essentially based on statistics. And you said, I'm quoting, that we need to get away from the idea that is an image that is the output or sound. It needs to start at a very foundational level and need to move completely away from what we have been served now as a sort of ready-made corporate package solution. So there is a large debate on what we can actually actively do in order to contrast these forces, not necessarily being able to revert them, but somehow to reinstate some subjectivity there, where it seems to be lost in this kind of magmatic scenario. And so what kind of criticism should we apply when generating outputs through machine learning system, which is a very common practice, even for plenty of very critical people. And I wanted also to ask you if there is a connection to another striking idea that you formulated in the past, which is the circulationism about images, which I don't know if there's even slightly accurate, but it might be defined as a kind of accelerationism with images as a main commodity.
So maybe let me start with the second one. I think, yes, circulationism was something which greatly accelerated with Web 2, social media, etc., etc. It was about the circulation, virality, spread of images, sounds, and so on. But I think that this has already gone to the next stage, where basically those data are supposed to circulate only within proprietary pools. There is not some, overarching surface like an open internet, but platforms try very hard to create their own ecosystems and to confine circulation basically to their own pool with all means, which means that the circulation doesn't really happen anymore, but a sort of concentration and stagnation of the data. All the platforms, of course, try to capture the same data. And but they are stagnant. They are not really circulating that much anymore. That's number one. Circulation has been superseded by some kind of monopoly stagnation, I think. Then the other question, yes, I mean, always, or not always, but I mean, machine learning is not a tool. It's not a, piece of something, an application we can open on our computer and that's it. It just sits on this huge stack anywhere, at least right now. And we cannot divorce it from the stack right now. Maybe it will be possible, who knows, I mean, I do not discard the possibility that, first of all, the energy expenditure will shrink a lot. I think that's doable to some degree. I do not discard the possibility that there will be models which are not trained on basically looted data. All of this could be improved, right? So maybe it's entirely possible that in 10 years, the landscape will have changed and we will have different tools to work with, right? So that's one hope for the future, that in a way there will be more autonomous tools to work with. And this is something that should be, demanded at every step of the way, that there needs to be at least control over the things we work with as media producers, as image producers, etc. Etc. But for now, the autonomy, the potential autonomy is quite small. Let's put it like this. And there's something I also want to add. Now, everything I said until now is strictly confined to, or mostly to the realms of cultural production, image production, sound production, text production, etc. I think that in other areas, for example, in medicine, in climate science, in astrophysics, you name it, statistical computation has a lot of value, right? We should not, because there are many aspects of machine learning industries which are frankly disgusting, throw, the whole idea out of the window. That's not productive. We have already seen, large advances in medicine precisely by the fact of large language models being able to, ingest all the studies, etc., etc. So there are a lot of areas where it makes a lot of sense. But I have the feeling, that most of the investment and also the public interest goes toward producing AI slop, which I do not really see what it does for humanity, instead of, going towards these areas of scientific research where it really makes sense.
Well, plenty of questions I would like to ask, but one of them, can you see a parallel with, let's say, the end of 90s, more or less, when the new multimedia cultural production started to have important figures, and then the industry started to invest in it, and there was a critical point of view to say, yeah, but these new tools, and especially when they start to be connected, would facilitate social mechanism rather than entertainment. But the industry, of course, was mostly interested in entertainment and, of course, extract the value from it rather than in any possible social improvement. Do you think that the AI slop, as you define it, I mean, as you mention it, can be a kind of a new peak of this, in this case, even self-centered entertainment, because it's not anymore something that is the same for everybody as it used to be. I think this is also another important step. Now, this entertainment, like generating images about your own image in various shapes or your own concept, is it pushes you to think that it's your own, that that you are producing something in a quite aesthetical way that you were not able to produce before. So what do you think about this parallel in time and this specific, let's say, customizing, bespoken aspect?
Yes, I mean, definitely the consumer is being targeted on a more individual level now. Yes. So it looks as if, you were able to produce more specific images. On the other hand, the DIY culture that was corporatized then at the end of the 90s was about creating more creatives, right? About creating creative industries. And this step now is about automating them, basically. About getting rid of the people who have the skills to make images, etc., etc. Of course, a new industry can emerge out of the new tools. Maybe, I'm not sure. It's not impossible. We'll have to see, what emerges from this. But right now, and I think image production is probably the smallest part of it. The biggest part is text production. It's about automation and basically automating tasks that were confined to humans, like writing books, for example. I mean, is entirely doable for AI now.
Yeah, which connects back to the creation of meaning that you were explaining. And do you, I mean, then I'm curious about your opinion in this creation of meaning, because, yeah, of course, the text creation is, and the automation of text creation is somehow in the public discourse, but not a lot, I would say, or not as much as the visual creation.
Yeah.
But do you think that instead it's the more crucial one somehow? Is it because it redefine? I mean, it how can I say? It most powerfully could create new meanings rather than the visual one. That the visual meanings would be more ephemeral compared to when new words and concept can be created and spread.
So I think it's mostly about scale right now. When I see the amount of machine-produced text, it's enormous online, absolutely enormous. And there's already automated blogs that, scan other automated websites and so on. So there is this huge explosion of automated text going on. Which may also be the case, and this changes, of course, the whole idea of public sphere text production, what text is supposed to mean. Also, of course, the working relations. PR is now, no one needs a PR person anymore. So basically, all the bullshit jobs in the meaning industry have been totally automated already. And I think the visual part is now just a tiny, tiny part of this. It's, of course, takes a lot of attention also because it's so unusual. I mean, according to our previous standards. But I think this interest is also, very much amplified by platforms who need, of course, this idea that AI democratizes art production and so on and so on to, take away attention from all the other effects of this technology.
But isn't there also a kind of threat, let's say, to knowledge as we have learned it? So the complex process of acquiring a new concept and connecting them on a personal level and finding sources that we know were written by knowledgeable people somehow. Because, I mean, on the other side, there is a quite substantial increase in the literature production. And I'm talking, of course, both about fiction and non-fiction, which is quite remarkable. So do you think that this area of production become a kind of area of resistance as well towards the automatic text production? and that somehow it's just a question of time when they will start to crush openly. I mean, no publishing, as far as I know, I'm following the field since quite a while, but no big publisher has fully embraced, has opened a series of openly, fully automated text. There are experiments here and there, but none of them has started to say, okay, this is legit exactly as a human author. And instead, it seems that the human authors are quite valued still at the moment. How do you see this relationship?
We'll see. I mean, I should think that, the writers themselves will start to use more and more AI and to create this kind of hybrid, precisely because it's much faster and will also help them to produce more. But I think one area where we can see it very clearly is the music industry, with Spotify, for example, where the songs that make money for their producers are the ones that are in playlists. And the playlists used to be curated by humans, and the authors used to make money. And now, basically, there was a sort of interim model where Spotify basically commissioned pieces for the playlists from human authors, but there was no more curator. And also they could basically reduce the fee for the songs being played. And now it's just fully automated, right? There is no more curator, and most of the basically authors are machines. So in that sense, automation has made huge advances already. And maybe, the literature market, which is let's put it, an elite market, right? This is not really what I was talking about. I was talking about the huge amount of, just generic text for information, etc., etc., right? And this, I think, is already being automated to quite extensively. And in literature, we will see. I think, just ask me. As an author, I don't think I'm going to do another fully human written book again. It's just too slow. I cannot do it as quickly as a machine. So I'm really thinking about how to change my writing practice so that it's still mine, but can maybe keep up with the speed of things happening, right? So maybe other authors will think the same. We will see. Maybe it's also, like you said, there will be a sort of human-made market, that will pride itself on not having anything to do with machines at all. That's also possible. Both of them could happen at the same time.
A kind of brand of organic literature, just to make a joke.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, non-GMO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We have just another couple of minutes, and instead of going in a more difficult question, I would just like to end taking up something that you were already mentioning. I was particularly fascinated by this noise concept that you brought up, and especially how, as you said, that people transformed into noise somehow. And connecting with the data, I mean, it is in the general cultural and especially academic debate, we date back to the 90s, the debate about how databases were important, how we were defined by our own data somehow. So do you think that this kind of this amount of data defining ourselves, which is more and more relevant somehow, is also a strategic or a good component of noise there as well, which is inevitable in this process?
Yeah, one could think of some kind of data camouflage, right? I mean, you cannot help producing data, but maybe you produce a lot of fake data in order to confuse the machines and flood the zone, with fake data about yourself. So that's maybe possible, like an octopus, a calamari, a squid, which ejects, ink in order to confuse the predator. Yeah, maybe that's a good use for AI. Yeah.
I think that's a perfect ending for this interview, and we are exactly on time. So let me thank you so much, Hito Steyerl, for your time and extremely interesting answer for this interview. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate, and thanks for the questions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.